Amen.
The meeting of the Board of Commissioners for the Town of Cicero for Monday, April the 11th, 2017. And we have a tradition of opening our meeting with a moment of silence. Thank you. And Jay Farrell, would you lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
Would everyone rise for the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
You have your agenda before us. Is there a motion to either approve the agenda or a motion to modify the agenda?
A motion to approve one modification to the minutes on page 31 under Commissioner concerns. The first item attributed to me was talking about the election service downtown event, and I intended to say tripping hazard, not stripping hazard.
All right, with that correction, is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Now, I'm assuming that what we've just done there is the approval of the consent agenda. So I'll ask then if there is any motion to amend or the balance of the agenda.
And you know what, I'll back up, because I did want to hold the fiscal policy for discussion.
Okay.
So I think we're going to discuss it, and I do have some questions. So if I could back up and amend the motion to approve the consent agenda with moving item 5 to new business number 2. I'd like to do that.
So the motion then is to approve the consent agenda except for item number 5, which should be moved to new business item number 2. Is there a second to Michael Fioco's motion? Thank you. Seconded by Pamela Baldwin. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. And then the balance of the agenda. Then would there be a motion to approve the agenda then as amended with the new business item number 2 pulled from the consent agenda?
Second.
Moved jointly by Jay Farrell and Beth Wilson-Foley and seconded by John Bonnet. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed. Thank you. We have tonight with us a representative of our local Great Crisis and Domestic Violence Group. This past week I was privileged to join with them around the courthouse circle with signs that were in both Spanish and English talking about the fact that this is National Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month. And so if Joanne Carver will come up, we're going to present this resolution, which then we will vote on and have duly signed and sealed and put in a frame. And but this is a resolution by the Board of Commissioners for the Town of Cicero in support of National Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month. And whereas April has been so designated, and this is time to reflect on and condemn crimes of sexual assault and to reaffirm that we hold the basic belief in the inherent dignity of all persons to be able to live in peace and free from crimes of sexual violence. And whereas too many people have suffered from these crimes, and yet we often do not speak up to condemn this crime as loudly as we should. And whereas our local law enforcement agencies and community organizations have been strong supporters of prevention of sexual assault crimes and strong supporters of the survivors of those crimes throughout the community. And whereas we, as public officials, join to condemn violence against any of our citizens and residents, and commit ourselves to speaking out more fully to support survivors and to support Pittsboro as a peaceful community. Therefore, be it resolved that the Town Board of the Town of Pittsboro reflects on and urges our hope that the Town of Pittsboro will be a peaceful community, free from crimes against people in our community, and the Board recommits support for survivors of such crimes and to work together to achieve a peaceful community where all persons may enjoy freedom from such crimes. This resolution was approved at the regular meeting of the Town Board on the 10th of April, 2017, and shall be entered in the public records for the Town of Pittsboro, indicating the Board's commitment to National Sexual Assault Awareness and Prevention Month. Is there a motion to accept this resolution? That Wilson Foley moves and Michael Fiocco seconds. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We'll get an official copy of this to you for the agency, and thank you for receiving it on our behalf. That's our ceremonial portion of this evening's agenda, and Citizens Matters is next. I believe we have Randy Bowler signed up to speak tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Perry. Not as crowded as the meeting 2 weeks ago.
No, indeed.
Seems a lot calmer. I just have 3 quick items for this board. One, I'd like to come back and present some items on the ceremonial agenda, and we'd like for Mayor Perry to be here, so we'd like to coordinate when you will be back. And I will work with Brian, but I have some items that we have found while we were moving things around that I thought we would put together and give to the town, one of which was the Main Street Award that we found, the original that we're framing up. Leslie and I would like to give to the town. One was an award that we got from Diener when the town actually first put reuse water to 3M. At the time, it was the first project in the state that had ever been done like that. At this point, I think they may have done others. Fred might know more about that, but we were one of the first to do a reuse project to an industrial user using tertiary treated and getting this variance out of our plant. And I found some of that information. We want to present that. And I'm not sure if the town ever had the resolution from Congress that Bob Etheridge and David Price presented. There were multiple copies when the courthouse had burned, but I'd like to present that framed up as well. So I figure they should be on our walls out here, and hopefully in a new town hall soon. Second item, I've been attending the Main Street meetings. You probably know that Doug Emmons and Jim Nass and Leslie and Kitty Meacham and the Lewises and others have been involved. Michael Fiocco has been the liaison for years, and they finally got their 501c3 status, or they're in the process. They've got certain things done, and they're on the way. And months ago, I volunteered to be the chair of the Economic Vitality Committee. Unfortunately, I missed the meeting where you all attended because Leslie and I were in Cuba. But I'd like to come back to the board and present some things we've been working on with them. So hopefully either the next meeting or the meeting after, but we'd like to present some things that we think that you should hear about economic vitality in that Main Street district. The final element, and I know the rule is not to speak about something that's on the agenda, so this is not necessarily related to it, although it sparked my interest. I have come before this board in this position and when I sat in that chair and discussed the possibility, this goes back 10 or 12 years, of some kind of committee maybe put together of the planning board, or perhaps this additional elements committee that did such excellent work, John, or maybe it could do this with the planning board. But I think, given your growth is coming, and given the fact we still have donut holes that we hopefully could get voluntary annexation, that it would make sense to have some committee work on this and report back to the board about what owners are willing to do this, because involuntary annexation, I think, has been shut off from the General Assembly as a policy option. But we have a number of donut holes that are not evident until you actually look closely at the map. And it would make sense, I think, to come to this board and figure out, how do we address this thing on Thompson Street where you have houses in town and out of town depending on where they are, which vexes real estate agents when they're listing these things, or that situation on Cornwallis, or the situation up near Chatham Forest, so forth and so on. I won't bore you with the details, but I'm hoping that you would consider doing that. And this might be a good job for that committee, which I agree with Commissioner Bonnet's, did a really good job having attended a number of them myself. They're well versed on what's going on in the town. You're going to be dealing with annexation with Chatham Park, so why not throw them this that you on? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Randy Bowler. Yes, we had talked about that during the election period, and I think it's it may be fraught with a few problems, but I think that from an equity standpoint, I think the opportunity needs to be made. Thank you, Joanne.
Thank you.
All right. The next matter on our agenda is mayor update. It's been a particularly nice period of time for me because I have gone to two different schools to speak, one career day and one a section of local government for the 8th graders at Horton Middle School. And I just don't think there's anything any more inspiring than speaking to school children. And it's probably my favorite part of the job. So they had excellent questions. The Horton Middle Schoolers had just returned from their annual trip to Washington, D.C. And it was, so they had found out a lot about the federal government. And we gave them information about how their local government is functioning and the kinds of things that we do on their behalf and for their safety. It was a very enjoyable time. On the 7th of April, I served lunch to the Habitat office here in town to honor the volunteers that work with them through AmeriCorps. And you'll recall that we did a proclamation in honoring volunteers at the last board meeting, and it was a lot of fun just to sit and talk to everybody, and everybody came in from the field, and we just had a big time talking about how important they are to the community. So, are there any other reports coming from other committees, climate change or Triangle J? EDC?
Jump in front of others?
Well, I'll mention the community program, as Randy mentioned. They're finalizing the 501c3 application and through the work with an attorney in Washington, I believe. So that's going very well, finalizing the application and the bylaws. We do have our federal ID numbers, so in fact, can open a bank account and start doing business, so that's good. And we're working feverishly to put together a budget proposal so that we can get to Brian in time to incorporate into our budget discussions. So that's going on. It's good to have Randy on board. He's a man full of ideas, a lot of energy. So he's chairing one of the 4 committees, so let it happen.
So regarding the County Climate Change Advisory Committee, a couple items to report on. The committee was asked by, I think it's County Commissioner Mike Dasher, to weigh in on a draft resolution that had been proposed for the county commissioners to consider. And this resolution is an aspirational one that I had been asked by a constituent to bring to this board, and I didn't think with everything on our plate that we should mess with that. It is an aspirational goal that the individual governmental unit, in this case the county, the state, and the nation should strive for 100% clean renewable energy by the year 2030. And the committee has weighed in on it and given the thumbs up. It will be challenging, but it will be feasible. It is feasible. And I happen to be privileged to have studied this a bit. But I wanted to report that had happened. And I don't know yet when it will be on the County Commissioner's agenda. The second item is the report from the committee on farmland and forestry, which includes a great number of different options and suggestions for the county to pursue that will help incentivize wood landowners and farm owners and other landowners to find win-win ways to put more carbon back in the soil and ways that will increase their agricultural productivity or their tree production activity. That is in very near state of completion. I need to make a few more edits to it, but it will be presented at the next committee meeting, I think in 3 weeks, and I anticipate that it will be approved. But I wanted to mention it because I'm always seeking anyone who knows large landowners who would like to review the document. It is just a draft document, and it is almost entirely voluntary, all the measures that are being suggested. But I'm very eager to connect with landowners who would be interested in looking it over. So if you have names, please let me know. Thank you.
Any other reports by commissioners? All right. Under old business, we have a report. Jeff Jones is going to be seeking consideration of the removal of an easement as a condition.
Well, I'll just preference and say that's not staff's seeking this condition removal. That is the developer of the Davy Street cottages. In July last year, the Town Board of Commissioners approved subdivision 2015-03, which was the Davy Street cottages. As part of that approval, there was a condition that this board placed on the approval on the subdivision that an off-site easement would be obtained by the developer on the Farrell property, which is across the street of Davy, on Davy Street. And according to the developer, speaking with staff and to his letter, the developer has reached out to the property owner and has not been able to obtain this easement, and is wishing that the easement that condition be removed from his approval process. I can answer any questions. Fred's here with engineering, can answer any questions. But it's really just kind of going off of the letter, and unfortunately I don't see the applicant here, so I would hope that they would have been here to be able to answer any questions that you may have as well. But again, I'll put it to you all to discuss.
Questions from the board?
I really, not a question, I guess. I didn't vote on this development from the start. Have my personal reasons also, but I'm not so sure. Ms. Farrell was also here, that this easement, and she has been informed everything on this easement. Is that correct?
Have I been informed? No.
Well,
No contact has been made with Mr. Dasher.
I can not support changing anything like this. That's why we put it out, to have that ditch and that swell repaired and replaced. As far as the easement, I guess I'd have to ask Mr. Messick regarding this. That is a town easement. Is the property owner, is she entitled to any payment for this easement?
The board
Landowner?
required it to be a public easement. And I'm not sure how that was supposed to have been worked out or contemplated, but obviously the property owner has to consent to that, or else you have to acquire it by eminent domain. And if you acquire it by eminent domain, you have to pay for it.
review, the concept here, as I recall it, was to benefit Ms. Farrell's property by controlling water that would be coming across from the Davy Street cottages. And when that came before the board was concerned enough about the drainage from that property and the fact that there was a improperly located pipe, improperly installed pipe, that was causing flooding on the property. Is that a proper summation of it?
Well, I think it's in general correct, except I don't believe that the improperly installed pipe has had that impact on flooding downstream. And at the time, my recollection was that Ms. Farrell desired some improvements for the drainage, and I think at the time was thinking of pipe, which I don't think is a good solution. For one, there'd be a lot of earthwork done to cover a pipe. You'd have a big hump in your yard that would look awfully odd. And so the swale, improvement to the existing swale so that it could accommodate and direct the flow in a controlled manner was the idea. And I understood at the time that you were receptive to that, and the developer was receptive to that, so I'm surprised to hear that it's unable to get resolved. And I hear what you're saying is that they've not reached out to you. We've got a letter here that says that they have, so it would be helpful if the applicant were here to kind of flesh that out. Yes, please.
The only person that has come to talk with me is Ms. Fred. We mentioned the options way back when. I never agreed on anything. The options were just mentioned to me. And of course, Mr. Dasher, when I said something about the pipe in the public meeting, said that I was trying to, property owner was trying to get what she could out of it, which that was, I just believe in doing the right thing and taking care of citizens of Pittsburgh that have been here forever.
And so my thinking on this is that the pipe underneath the street is conveying what we would call public and private water, because some of the roadway is delivering water to that pipe and then sending it down your yard. And there is probably what was once an established swale, but has over the years filled in with debris, roots, leaves, and all that stuff, and grown grass, and become inconsistent. And the idea is that water now flowing in that area will probably meander, whereas if this developer is given the opportunity, they would improve it so that it will stay in one spot that you can rely on, that it will be there. And that was the idea if there was any increase in flow from this upstream property, that it be maintained and controlled in that fashion. So that was the whole idea of having this work done, and then once it is done, allowing the town to maintain it, so that all of the cost burden of maintaining that swale is on the town, because it's collecting water from lots and lots of places, roads, other properties, and it's hard to say who's responsible for it.
And you realize if you've seen my home, how close it's going to be to my home, to my house. And it's also going to depreciate my home if the easement is done and all that work is done.
Well, it was intended to be a benefit to you, not a detriment to you. If you don't want a benefit to you, then I'm not sure the town ought to be involved in trying to make it happen. If you're willing to accept the yard as it is, with the meandering ditch, he calls it a swale, I'd call it a ditch, then that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's what
It's going to get worse because water goes downhill, and whenever you strip all the grass, it's going to make it even worse when it's just nothing but impervious surface. I don't care how much you put, whatever you do, it's still going to run down there.
So, Ms. Farrell, are you saying that if it was, that you would agree to to the easement if,
No, because I don't approve of the property. It looks like why would I approve of something halfway whenever I don't think it's suitable for the community? So if it needs to stay as is and nothing be done, then that's the choice the board has made.
are there other questions for either Ms. Farrell or is the board feeling?
I'm curious, Ms. Jen, can you speak on this, whether you think that this is accurate, that having the development there with this plan in place, will it be worse?
I'll be the stormwater engineer.
Right.
Answer that.
Right.
Is that a water question?
Well, I was thinking of it as a planning design thing.
Okay.
Whoever is feels most qualified to speak, I just want to know what your thoughts are about the solution they've come up with. If you think that it will indeed make things worse, or do you think it will improve the situation?
The development cannot increase the flow that's already coming down the drainage. It cannot divert the flow. I mean, that's just the law. And I think that the question is whether this was designed enough to make sure that doesn't happen.
That's what I'm talking about.
Well, Mr. Will told my neighbor and I that it would increase. So that's a little contradiction here. So
Well, I think the increase is based on a particular event. So our ordinance requires, I think, the one-year storm, the peak for the one-year storm, which is a very frequent event, not to increase. And they've designed a device to slow that water down. Other storm events probably will increase. And that is the way our ordinance is. That's the state of our ordinance today. So every project that comes through does the same thing to the downstream owners. I did speak with Fred today, and Fred, if I mischaracterize our conversation, jump in. But he's of the opinion that even without the improvements, that it would not be detrimental to your project, to your property. And so he feels as though if nothing is done, it won't be any worse for you than it is today.
there is erosion already where there's a big tree. The roots are above the ground. That's not from just ages. That's from water rushing through. Did you see that tree?
No.
I was going to ask Mr. Royal what he thought about this. If you could say something, please.
Sure, I'll do my best to try to explain where I'm coming from. So, we did meet on the property. When was that?
It's been about a year.
About a year. And I saw pictures, and we walked the property. So the issue of the pipe being reversed is, in my mind, where the big change, the difference will be shown. When the developer changes the pipe over the design storm, which is the 1-year, 24-hour storm, I think there will be more flow going across your property because the pipe will be actually working the way pipes are supposed to work. Right now, the road is like a dam, and so you're not seeing the water flow like you would when a development is built. When it rains more than about 3 inches in 24 hours is an estimate. So over time, with the pipe fixed, you would see more flow than you're seeing today, in my opinion. But that's only 10% of the rainfall. Most rainfall around here is less than 3 inches, so you won't see that most rain. But some you will. So that's why I suggested the swale in the first place, to handle those other 10% rainfalls that could scour out the yard even more than it is today. And there are roots. There's a tree that fell over. There's a lot of undulating issues through there. So the swale, in my mind, would have done the best job for controlling up to the 25-year storm event, which is more than 3 inches of rain in 24 hours. So, other than the swale, the only other option would be a culvert. And I don't know if the grades support the culvert, or whether it would have to be a mounded, because if the culvert can't be deep enough, it would be a mound over top of it. And I don't know what the grades are to speak to that. But so that was the essence of why a swale was my suggestion in the beginning.
So, Mr. Royal, your comments regarding the pipe that's inclined in the wrong direction, even with the innovative BMP stormwater catchment basin that Mr. Dasher has proposed, even with that, there will be an increased flow?
For storm events greater than what that basin's designed to manage.
Okay.
It only is designed to manage the first inch of runoff for water quality and the 1 year, 24-hour statistical storm event. So anything above and beyond that, like really high intensity storms or tropical type storms or these July type intense rainfall, there will be more flow bypassing that device and going on through. And the road won't act as a dam anymore because the pipe will be properly installed. That was my concern for her.
And assuming we're able to work things out, this is just hypothetical, and the swale is able to be widened and properly channelized, I'll just call it channelized, because that's what I think I'm hearing is clearing roots and meanders out of the way, make it straighter and deeper if necessary. Presumably, the best way to install that would involve some treatments of the surface to prevent, to encourage grass restoration.
Correct. It'd probably be matted. Grass would grow through. It's probably shady, so it would be a type of grass that can grow in partial sun, and then it would be just a grassed swale, which the town would maintain. If all the agreements were to be made, the town would theoretically maintain it, mow it, and clean debris out of it when necessary.
And is fair. Am I hearing from you a concern that there is a significant or memorable tree that is partly in the ditch or exposed in the ditch now that you fear will be lost if this channelization happened?
I don't know about that. I just know that if it continues the way it is, sure. That's just the way
You'll lose
it's
the tree.
understanding.
Okay. And so your concerns exist with or without the development across the street, that this ditch is not working properly. And is it fair to say that you would prefer that it work properly and you'd prefer the water channel away from your house?
Well, I don't want to have it almost to my corner of my house.
So you don't want it to move any closer to your house?
No, absolutely not. And I don't know how far it would go down. I don't know how wide it would be. But I have, 10 or 15 feet, is that much, from the runoff to the corner of the patio.
That's what you have now, Ms. Farrell? Okay. And how high is that water coming through?
Oh, we've had it to where my daughter was going down in a raft. That's how high it gets to where we can raft down it. It's like a little stream. And those pictures were the ones that I showed you a year or so ago. And then recently with Nashville, there was something that came up. We were able to
Float down.
Float down, yeah.
Randy Bowler, did you have a suggestion or
Quick
comment?
question. This area we've obviously looked at since we started Chatham Forest years ago, Davie Street. Fred, and it's a question, I guess, in general with Fred and maybe John Petit, but why couldn't the town cooperate with the developer to go curb and gutter and put sidewalk in there in that right of way? I know it's not going to be good for water quality, John, but it might help handle this issue of the flooding by redirecting it and creating a much nicer streetscape. It's not a very long street. And if you ever walk on there after a storm, not all those pipes have issues that are under the driveways. They're all either undersized, or they're sloped improperly, or there's something inside of them. I mean, seriously.
I've seen the pond.
Yeah. So it just seems like maybe you could get cooperation, and that might be something that would be a better solution. Again, I'm just offering it, because I've been walking on that street for 20-plus years.
I'll say that the ponding, I think, is the product of an insufficient size pipe. Because what I think is going on, as far as the incorrect installation, is that the upstream side, which you would expect it to flow this way, and the pipe is tilted this way, there's only 1/10 of a foot difference, an inch.
It's not huge.
An inch and a quarter.
That's not the biggest dynamic.
Right. It's the size of the
pipe, dynamic pipe.
And
makes sense.
What Randy is saying is if we were to curb and gutter and sidewalk everything, there would still be this discharge point. The water's still going to go through this yard as it goes downstream. Yeah.
I was going to say
we're not going to change the low
Well,
point.
if you took it up at the top of Thompson Street, where it should have been going down this way, it goes down Baby Street. The water flow does. So that adds more water. So if that was redirected, that would help with some of the problems. Of Thompson, yeah.
But couldn't you get it over to 64 to where the ditch line is there? I mean, I don't know all the elevations. I'm just thinking that there might be a way to get catch basins in there. Or Fred, is it all going? There's just no.
It's probably 15 feet higher, 64.
There's no.
And Ms. Burrell, I think
Okay.
that this swale would look like your yard. Okay? I think it would be, I'm going to put my engineering hat on this. So it's going to be 2 feet wide, and it's going to be laid back very flat so that mowing can occur. And it's probably going to end up being about 8 feet wide, and it's a foot deep, and you're going to barely notice that it's there. And my expectation is it's going to go beyond your house, to the back of the yard, to wherever it have to. You have to convey it that far. So that's what the thinking was to make an improvement on your property, and to control the direction of that flow and erosive velocities with, let us say, some reinforcement that allows the grass to take hold and grow. And it would not be completed, it would not be deemed complete until that grass was healthy and growing.
So, Ms. Farrell, I am not very familiar with this topography, the lay of the land that we're talking about, but I frequently drive past your house on the way into Chatham Forest and back. So I'm certainly familiar with the ponding on the west side of the street. I'm embarrassed that I just haven't honestly paid much attention to the east side of the street. But I feel very confident that what we're trying to do here and what we got agreement from the developer to do was to make an improvement to the drainage situation on that side of the street, on your land. In my mind, it's not necessary that there be a public right-of-way. If it's done properly, I think as Commissioner Fiocco suggested, it should be able to be easily mowed by you just the same way that you or whomever you have mow your property. But I understood that to be an accommodation that the board wanted to make to improve your situation or to give you some confidence. Am I speaking out of turn?
I think that was the intention, to make sure that her yard was not any more eroded or endangered, nor the foundation of her house.
So, I'll just say as a citizen, I apologize whatever communication mix-ups occurred or miscommunications or lack of communications to you. But I hope that you're hearing the board now clear that was our intent. And if that's the way you would like it to move forward, then I suppose we need to address the question, what would be your next steps to have the town easement occur so the project could proceed and you could have that ditch smoothed and shaped so that it'll drain properly. If you don't want that to happen, or if you feel as a point of principle that you just can't weigh in on this, then I think we're forced to change our ordinance or our approval to withdraw the offer of the easement. Is that correct? We've approved the project, but if we can't get an easement, then I think we need to move forward. But I'm not quite sure what to do here.
Well, I think that what is, I mean, I'd feel more comfortable, first of all, by having the developer here, and I think his absence speaks volumes. And if it takes some sort of a negotiated discussion between you and him, I mean, this is a development which has been approved, and I know that you have conscientiously stood against it, and I know that it's still not in your favor, but it's going to happen, and I guess what this board is trying to do is to lessen the impact to your piece of property. And if that is something that we can help you do, I think the board would like to do that. We're fortunate to have a member of our public works staff, Forrest. I see you in the back. Is that right? And you've been nodding off and on as to, I'm gathering you've done some work down there previously.
Yes, ma'am.
And do you have any suggestions that might help guide the board?
I suggest the easement person.
Would you come to the podium for us?
No.
If I may, he said would suggest the easement.
Yes.
Well, and his expertise is important to me because he knows the lay of the land as well.
Not so much, no ma'am. I as well. Come on, Forrest. I as well drive by there on a daily basis, and I see that yes, there is an issue with the grade, water meandering. Yes, I suggest you go with the town and better the water flow. It will be beneficial to your property, how I feel.
And you would probably be working with the maintenance of it.
Yes, ma'am.
As well as your continuing maintenance of other areas in the town.
Yes, ma'am. It would be kept up just like the rest of the town to the best of our ability.
Thank you, Forrest.
You're very welcome.
Fred, I have one question. Is the developer planning on changing that pipe that's from the west to the east side? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, they would lay a brand new pipe that's, I think, a 24-inch concrete pipe. That's on the downslope, probably 0.5% or 1% slope.
And I know we spoke of this because I do remember this, and of course it came from the developer as an expense. I'm like the mayor. I don't know why he's not here to speak his piece, but you know, it was my suggestion to have pipe run down through there. It's a ditch already cut there. Of course, it's going to be expensive for backhoe and some pipes, but it's a very good ditch and has got plenty of fall down through all the way down to that creek. I don't think pipe would have to be laid all the way. It could be laid to the edge of the woods right there, and shouldn't be no problem other than a little erosion going down in there. Cut it deep enough, her yard would be level, and you wouldn't have this swell. And that was my suggestion, maybe, you know, back in the past. If the developer had been here, maybe he could have made some suggestions.
Dollars,
money.
Well, the commissioners.
All about the money.
The commissioners meet on alternate Monday nights, but they also have other meetings, so he may very well have been involved in another county meeting. Would it, is a thought that it should move over to the next agenda with the hope that the parties could get together? Ms. Farrell, are you feeling any more satisfied about the idea that the town is trying to make a resolution here? And would you engage in a conversation with, say, Fred and the developer and anyone else from the board if
I guess my concern was in your presentation just a few seconds ago was that you were the board was trying to help me out. Then why was there a need for an easement? Is that, if what you were saying was where the direction was going, then why was it even an issue for an easement?
As I recall, Commissioner Trocchi could speak directly to what his rationale, but we wanted to take over responsibility of that so that it would be our responsibility, it wouldn't be your burden.
And by that, the town would maintain it, but that would not prevent you from maintaining it also. In other words, if you didn't appreciate, if the grass was growing high and you wanted to mow it, you could mow it. The easement just gives the right to the town to do the work.
Well, there's an easement behind my property in between me and the other person, and I have seen the way that that's kept. So I guess that's some of my...
That's a sewer easement.
A sewer easement, which doesn't get mowed frequently. But I think something like this that is in your yard you would not be prevented from managing it yourself. If it was behaving badly or poorly, then the town would have the obligation to remedy that. It would not be your obligation, which today, the water comes through, if it's running it up, you have to deal with it. So the idea was that, one, it would be an improvement to the property by controlling the water, and then put the onus on the town to do the heavy lifting if it was required.
So if something wasn't working properly, the town would be responsible.
Yeah.
So having the easement would not depreciate my property?
I don't think so at all.
You don't think?
I don't.
Their easement
would.
Do what?
Every easement we ever acquire, it's based on there being some devaluation of property. See also the sidewalk project that we just completed. Easements devalue properties all the time.
I don't think drainage easements do that all the time if it's a public easement, so that
It's pretty hard from flooding.
it shows
But
that.
an easement is an easement, isn't it?
Yeah, but it only gives a right.
She can't enjoy the full use of her property because there's an easement going through it. It devalues the property.
No, she didn't enjoy the full value of the full use of the property.
Can she build on it?
You wouldn't build that close to the road.
She can't further. She can't do it. She wouldn't build on it right now.
She can't plant trees on it. She can't otherwise use it. It would devalue her property.
Well, in some respects, of course, I think of it as improving the value of her property, but I suppose that's all in discussion. But I don't think we're going to seek a resolution tonight, and although I'd love for you not to have to come back again and advocate one way or the other, I do think that we need some more information and we need some further input from you about whether you, I mean, if you are just saying flat out that you don't want it, then I think then the board is needs to pay attention to what it is you're saying. But it also leaves you without a remedy in the future. And for that,
I want my property to depreciate because of an easement. And if I have to go, if it goes that way, and no, I mean, why would I do that? I mean, just let the water keep coming.
Well,
and what happens?
it doesn't need to be an easement.
Well, that's
I
why I was.
thought that
That's
was-
why I was.
I thought that was helpful.
Okay.
It doesn't need to be an easement. The developer can make the improvement and leave it to you to manage it. We can do that.
And if that's your preference, that's the change that was proposed on the agenda tonight. If that's your preference, that's what we were going to take action to do, was strike the easement notion and move forward.
I would like some time to think about what I'm going to do.
I think something to think about, like if, I don't know, if I was buying a house and I saw that when there was a heavy rain that the yard was flooding, that would make me less likely to buy a house. It might, I mean, it's one of those things that's really hard, I would think, to put a value on this, but my thinking is if your yard is no longer flooding, then that would make your house more desirable, not less desirable. But I'm not a real estate agent, I don't know, but
I think it is subjective.
that's hard to say.
Is there a motion?
Well, before we do that, I would like to hear from the developer, since he has not spoken with Ms. Farrell. I would like for him to speak with us in reference to it, and why he hasn't spoken with Ms. Farrell. I think that would be only fair.
I'd also like clarity that when the word easement here is used, it's not talking about not making the improvements.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I would hate for the action to be taken and it be perceived as the improvements aren't to be made because I said easement.
But they can only be done with her permission.
That's true. That is true.
If she does not give permission, whether it's to the developer or to the town, it won't happen.
That's right.
If I may,
Then the project would simply stop at the right of way with the end of that pipe and let the water run however it's going to find its way.
Fred, did you have something else to add?
I was just going to mention, if everyone were to agree to a swale, not with no easement, then the only easement would be a temporary construction easement to allow the contractor to access the property to build the swale temporarily and then pull out.
Yeah, and that's not at all uncommon in construction, DOT projects and stuff like that, that grant a temporary easement so that something can be installed and then it comes off within a year or 2 years or something. Okay. And that would give you time to consult with your attorney or real estate people or whatever about your concerns. Okay.
So we're tabling it?
If there's a motion, you do so, yes.
Motion to table till next meeting.
Second.
Moved by Michael Fiocco, seconded by Jay Farrell. Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next on our agenda is the new business, the Joint Orange Town Task Force membership. Brian Griswold.
Thank you, Mayor Perry. You have the memo before you this evening, and essentially what the county manager is requesting is appointment from the town of Pittsburgh, can either be the mayor or a board member to engage with a committee of a couple of Chatham County board members, and a couple of Warren County board members to talk about common issues that part of the community faces. You guys might recall that there was a committee that met, a similar joint committee that met years ago, and I don't have the history on it, but it met for a number of times, a few times, and then the story I get is board composition changed maybe in both counties, and so it just kind of went away. And so they're looking, I guess, given with the economy picking up and projects picking up, they're wanting to get back together again. And it really does sound kind of like a neat group insofar as they want to get together, talk about common issues, not necessarily solve the world's problems, but make sure that everybody's in communication and aware of what's happening. So if that's something that interests you, just asking that you consider appointing membership to the board. If you don't feel the need to do that this evening, you can certainly decide how you want to do that. Maybe we come back on the 24th and formalize it.
What's the pleasure of the board?
First of all, there's someone that's interested in this.
Yeah, that's important. I'm trying to minimize the number of things I'm doing these days, so I would like to, although I'd be interested, I feel like I'm not participating.
Ditto. Well, I'm definitely interested in these issues. I just can shoot myself in the foot or head for joining yet another
valuable if you're tied to Chatham County, Orange County, or Chatham.
It's only a one-year commitment.
It's not to August.
Oh, well, that's better.
Your comment, Mr. Bowler?
The history of this board is it was formed by Moses Carey, Barry Jacobson, myself, and George Lassier and others, and the whole point was to have a dialogue back when we were facing growth pressures. Then we had a change in the Chatham County Commissioners, and they elected to pull the plug, so the phone kind of went silent. And they've been trying to reinstitute this board, obviously because of what's going on from Pittsboro North. We had the mayor and a backup person appointed to the board, so that would be typically what you would do, but you could appoint two members of your board, but one person would be the normal member and one would be the alternate, and they can both attend. And the meetings are held up usually in Carborough, Chapel Hill, and we had one down in Pittsboro, but we met at Owasso and stuff like that. It's a good group for this board to be part of.
There came to be a time when discussions with Owasso ended up breaking down from a political standpoint because, or just because the Chatham County folks weren't sure that they wanted to establish a relationship with Owasso. Was that part of the breakdown in all of this?
In this, that's a whole separate dialogue, and Owasso had distrusted a long time ago that Chatham and Pittsboro were going to be planning, but then we got together and created the Jordan Lake Partnership, and that kind of also came out of these meetings in 2006 and 2007. But this actually, I think, bore a lot of fruit because you had all the policymakers there and staff, and so you're able to have dialogue on a lot of issues, not just transportation, not just this issue. And I would recommend that you put two people on the board that want to attend these meetings, and you'll get a lot out of it because it's focused. And you'll get the Orange County Commissioners in the room with you in Chapel and some of the issues you really need to talk to them about.
Michael Fiocco had expressed an interest. Is there anybody else who would like to?
I'll second that.
Second my interest.
And I promise when I come back, I'll just...
Always be the talk.
Okay. Do we need to vote on that, or can you just volunteer that?
I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Michael Fiocco to the Joint Chatham Orange County Task Force.
Second?
Second.
Those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Michael?
All opposed, donate shoes.
Thank you for service, and that does all.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like I said, we have a memorandum of updates from you. Oh, I'm sorry. I left off the fiscal policy and full consent agenda. Excuse me. New business item number 2. Heather? Yes. Do you want to address, Mike, would you have a specific question that you want to address? Or?
I thought that we would have a presentation on this. If we don't, I could go to questions.
Okay, I didn't make a presentation on it. I guess with the sort of idea that since we put it on the previous agenda as an FYI, if there were any questions or about it to make changes for tonight, then I would make those changes. And then, but since I didn't have any prior to the meeting, I put it on consent thinking that it was okay.
Okay, because I understood we were going to discuss it in this meeting.
Okay.
So, obviously, generally good ideas. One of my concerns, I guess, is putting in place a policy that then hamstrings the board in such a way that says it doesn't meet this criteria, therefore we can't do it, when this board thinks it's important to do something. And so that's probably my key concern.
Well, the thing with the policy, though, is, even, if you approve this policy, this isn't written in stone because it can be changed. So if there was something that came up, that we had a valid reason to potentially change this policy. I mean, we could, like the percentages in here, and those are all, what do I want to say, municipal sort of common percentages. So, I mean, that's sort of like I guess I would sort of say the standard that a lot of municipalities have adopted. I guess maybe a best practice, but it's not to say that there wouldn't be if a project met, maybe went a little bit above, caused us to go a little bit above a percentage, that we couldn't do that. I mean, and I could even put something in here that if a project met X, Y, Z criteria, even though it went above a certain percentage, it wouldn't limit the town from doing that. But again, we could always make an adjustment to this policy.
Well, speaking of the percentages.
Yeah.
So, I guess debt management policies, tax-supported debt, item 7.
Yep.
So the 2.5%.
So the assessed value of our taxable property, I didn't bring the audit with me, so I don't have it until like our most recent. But I mean, it's hundreds of millions of dollars.
Close to $500 million.
Yeah. So 2.5% of that is still pretty large.
Okay. Just 12 million. 120 million went off by a factor.
Right, but right now we don't have any anywhere near, and that's only for debt that would be linked to getting repaid by our tax dollars. So out of general funds.
We have no tax-supported debt, right?
Yeah.
Zero.
Enterprise fund side is a different story, but we have no obligation as far as that warrant generated revenue.
Like linked to so more like a revenue bond.
GO.
Yeah, or GO bond, yeah.
General obligation bond is what this is referring to.
So let's say we do a capital improvement, take a loan out from the bank. That tax, that's not. Okay.
I think what, if you look at number 7 under tax-supported debt, it says should not exceed 2.5%, as Heather indicated.
As opposed to shall not.
Yeah. Should
Or
that?
never,
You really
or
should.
never exceed.
Yes, right. Okay. Okay, then tell me about number 9. Tax-supported debt again. Okay, so we have 0%. But when I look at the amortization schedule, I can't ever get a loan to be 55% paid off in 10 years. If it's a 20-year loan or a 30-year loan, without making some additional contribution on a monthly basis to that payment. So it's the 55%, the way it's, amortization schedule says, no, you're going to pay interest, and then you can pay some principal. That principal hardly ever goes down. So I'm just wondering, is that a realistic number?
I believe it. Yeah, I believe it is. The thing with typically with stuff that is tax-supported debt, I mean, it's a different payout schedule than your typical installment loan payout schedule. You have you're paying off the principal. You can have bigger principal payments up front, and a lot of times you have, well, I guess you can structure them in different ways. So, but we have one where we're only paying principal. We don't have interest on it, like a loan. It's not a debt. It's not the tax-supported debt, but we have a loan where we're only paying principal. So you have different structures. So I mean, I can double check. What I did was I looked at other municipalities and I looked at what percentages they had for this type of criteria.
And I think what I'm hearing you say, Ms. Meacham, and I think I recall from grad school, is that in public sector finance, that carrying debt is not something that has any tax benefits because we're not a private entity.
Yeah, we don't.
Not subject
we don't
to
get
those
anything back.
Tax incentives for.
You don't pay any income tax, so you don't need to deduct.
Right. Thank you. Hence the shorter payoff.
Right.
Typical.
Yeah.
Typically shorter payoff.
I mean, you kind of have some, I mean, you do have some loans that are out for 40, 30, 40 years, depending on what, I mean, that's on, we have one on the sewer side.
The rural development loans will term out at, say, 40 years, for
Yeah.
example. Whereas you contrast that with one of our installment purchase loans, and it's 5 years.
Yeah. But those, I mean, but those are water and sewer obligations, not tax, not linked to the tax.
Well,
So, right, well, the current ones that we have
the
outstanding.
current ones, right.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Mark?
Yeah, I'd hate, obviously I've got questions, I could appreciate some additional information.
Okay.
Before I'm comfortable with, because I've got some questions for Andy. I guess the only other things I had was on the budget development policies.
Yep.
Utility rates will be established at appropriate levels to enable the related funds to be self-support. I know that's a general concept, but I know in the past we've had to get creative and do some transfers. And I don't want this policy statement to prevent that from occurring when you're in a pinch.
Okay.
Because we've been in a pinch, because nobody wants to do that.
Right.
So we've had to.
So, I mean, are you okay if I just reword
Probably.
that?
You change will to should, for example, and that should.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny because one of the things I said, okay, I want to change this subject to fiscal policy guidelines.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, we can title it that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess one other item I have says that the town will pursue an aggressive policy.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
We don't like the aggressive.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's just be matter of fact about it. I don't think we need to be aggressive.
Yeah.
Cash management investment policies, item 8. Investment income will be allocated to each participating fund.
Mm-hmm.
What are the participating funds?
Well, so the way that we manage our money is we have one checking account, and all our money from the general fund and the water and sewer fund are in one checking account. So I keep track of, so I have a spreadsheet every month, the interest that we earn on that checking account, I break up between the general fund and the water and sewer fund and the different project funds that have money that are in that, and then they get allocated a percentage of that interest.
Okay. This one other item, back to budget development policy. Number 3, one-time or special revenues will not be used to finance continuing town operations, but instead will be used for funding special projects. I guess that makes more sense now.
Yeah, and that typically would be involved in like, if we did a special tax assessment, it's going to be used for specific.
Right.
Or you had grant revenue.
Or grant revenue.
For a particular project.
Yeah.
Okay. That's all I have.
Do you feel comfortable proceeding, or do you want to work with her on some rewording?
Yeah, I would like to.
All right, then.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So now we're at manager's update. Brian Griswold.
Thanks. You have a memorandum this evening. We are still working on language for the Sanford Forestry, continuing to work with Davenport and with the Wooten Company on that project. As I also mentioned, staff and Wooten Company had a kickoff meeting last week to discuss early stages of the project and how we proceed forward. So we'll be actually looking to provide you regular updates on that as the project and as the project design moves forward. And again, we'll have more information regarding the agreements from all involved once we have the language, once staff's comfortable with the language. I've had some discussion recently with the Chatham County manager regarding one of the key items on that resulted from our retreat this past, I guess, February, and that being on the master utilities plan. As you'll recall, that on the growth curves that we had discussed in reviewing the Sanford Force Main, some of the Phase 2 and Phase 3 issues will by nature require regional area collaboration. And so we thought it might be prudent to engage into a master water and sewer utilities plan with County. Cyrus City may also have some interest on the project or on that study. So county staff right now is chasing down some estimates, and so we'll be looking forward to giving you some language, proposed language on that. That sounds like a direction that you would be interested in heading. Again, we can review that once we have a little bit more information. Also, of a collaborative nature, you'll recall that we are currently undergoing an interconnection study with regard to water services with Chatham County. We should have some information within the next 2 weeks on that. And then also to not so collaborative, but just staying here locally, our asset management plan that W.K. Dixon is currently working on will also be generating an interim report that will identify where we have to begin prioritization of fixes along our sewer system. Those will be fixes outside of, in all likelihood, the areas that we're currently fixing over in the East Chatham neighborhood and down nearish the current wastewater plant. So the continuation of, I guess, our war on I&I will be full bore moving forward. It's just going to be something that we're going to have to continually work on, and it's going to require a plan because there's plenty of old infrastructure to be addressed. The couple other things I'll go off script here just briefly. I'm not sure how many of you are aware. I won't be talking about it with a lot of detail because we haven't received any formal information, but we've had some meetings with staff. But the old chicken plant has been purchased by a concrete firm, and so again they've met with staff on some of the issues. It's apparently there's going to be a little bit of employment, certainly not what it was with the chicken plant. There are some opportunities there as far as reuse water, and so we're engaged in discussions on that as well moving forward. So it sounds like a previous useful property will be repurposed, which is I think good news there. And EDC also I must give some credit to as far as their work on the project to this point. The PRV valve, or the pressure reducing valve, was replaced on Chatham Forest Drive, and I think that went really well. Our staff did an excellent job. I think Adam picked it over at the water treatment plant, really stepped out of his, I guess I'll call it a comfort zone, maybe for lack of a better way to put it, and got out and involved with a little bit more on this project. And did, I think, a pretty good job of notifying residents in the area of what was happening, and so that came and went, which is, I think, one of those no news is good news projects. You don't really want any news because it's generally going to be bad whenever you're interrupting water service. So in this case, I think we got her done in pretty short order. So good job, I think, with staff on that. We also, as we indicated, I think it was the previous meeting, managed to get the culvert and some storm drain actually some under road culvert structure repair done over on Chatham Street. So if you drive down kind of the bottom where it kind of bottoms out over on Chatham, just as you're going back up the hill to the landscaping plant, You'll notice some improvements made in there. I think it's going to help quite a bit. I think that the day it was operational was the day we received quite a bit of rain, and it seemed to be handling it fairly well. However, there was some runoff, I think, from one of those neighboring housing projects. It's kind of washing into the road, and so it was a little bit deceptive. So I think there's going to be, once those housing projects stabilize, and I think it's maybe incumbent on the town too to work with those builders, then I think that area will look better. And then, as I mentioned, that's something I want to prioritize as far as our repaving goes in this next year, to come up with a longer-term paving solution through there in this next year. And that may be a little bit pricey, but more on that to come as well. There was a question, I believe it was Commissioner Foley indicated last week that there were some issues with the dam that she noticed. Fred went out and took a look, and he didn't jam his thumb into it like I asked him to. So, but there is some leaking going on. He's going to be meeting with an engineer tomorrow. I think the issue there is really one of facilitation. We're not. I want to be clear that because we do have our raw water impound in that area, I guess we do have an interest in that dam operating properly for any number of other reasons, absent any number of other reasons. But in our case, I think because really it's a situation where until Commissioner Foley mentioned something, nobody had really been taking action. This is one of those situations where I think we want to facilitate some action taking place and then get out of the way where it's possible. But yeah, we're just trying to make phone calls and see what's possible right now, and we'll see what we need to do.
Do we know who the responsible?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do we know who the responsible party is?
The company that owns the dam.
Ventures LLC.
Who is responsible for taking the repairs to it. We just obviously have an interest because of the impound area and for other obvious reasons, but as far as any financial impact from that's not really our bailiwick.
And is this the same company that owns the sluice way to the generation station, the hydroelectric?
The purpose of owning the dam, I think, is to generate hydro.
At one point, it was owned by the same people. I don't know what it is now.
So there was another firm that at one point in time had come to us on some information for reapplying for the license. I haven't heard much about them since that, but I think we're talking about the same firm that's owned it for years. So.
Okay, thank you. Please. I'm sorry to interrupt your flow.
No, you're good. I was actually trying to reflow myself, so that's fine. Budget work just continues, and as you can see from the upcoming meetings schedule, we're going to have the 24th meeting on the 24th is going to have a few things on it, and we'll be submitting the budget on May 8th. And so I probably would be looking to actually have the public hearing for the budget take place on May 22nd. And keep in mind, we have until the last meeting in June to actually approve the budget. So, but it's my intention that May 8th will be the date that you actually receive the budget message, not necessarily have discussion on that item on that night, but we will need to be engaging in that discussion in subsequent meetings and moving that forward as well. With that, I can't think of anything else to say at this moment. So.
One of the things I remember that we had scheduled for, I guess, this meeting was an update on the Jordan Lake Partnership.
Not much to update on that. The town has provided financial information to the consultant, which is Reptelis. Reptelis is actually being retained by the city of Durham, who's one of the leading drivers of the project. we've provided that utility and financial information to them. They're completing the analysis on it. There'll be another kickoff meeting, I shouldn't say kickoff, but kind of a reacclimating, getting to know you meeting with the Jordan Lake Partnership later this month that staff will be attending. And from that, we think we may have maybe some new information, but I don't think there's a guarantee that there's going to be a lot of things that are generated from that, even as far as new information, what the status of the project is.
And is the Chatham Park financing agreement draft the same thing as the Sanford Force Main that we just talked about?
Yeah, as I mentioned, in that item on the updates, we're continuing to work on terms, trying to meet.
All right. Are there questions from the board for Brian on this update? Was that Commissioner's concern? St. Carol? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I do have some questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So on the concrete plant, I've heard confusing things. Pretty sure what I've heard more recently is that indeed this will be a mixed plant. They'll actually be trucking wet cement out. Is that your understanding?
We haven't received anything formal from them yet.
Oh, nothing formal. Okay. Prior thing that I understood from the EDC was that it would be a packaging plant, ready mix, and I envisioned a powder bagged product. But if there's discussion of use of reuse water, I'm guessing it's a mixing plant.
Packaging is all I've heard at this point, but there could be some opportunities for reuse. They seem to be interested, but we don't know exactly each and every aspect of their process. So.
Wow. So, okay.
I'm sorry,
It just seems like there's such a significant difference between those two concepts of a competitor to Chandler versus a company that's going to be bagging dry powder cement.
We'll be glad to pass along more information when we have it. I'm not sure what you've heard, so I don't know.
And the future agenda, any additional thoughts on the NPDES permit memorandum of understanding? Any updates?
We've been talking about language, and we certainly can present you with something, but it's not going to be a finished product yet.
Okay. Well, I'd like us to schedule a conversation about that. I don't know whether it needs to be in a main meeting or a workshop, but I feel like that's really, really very important.
Do you want to do something different with other than the May 8th meeting that's going down there?
I guess I'd like to see what the policy is on the board. What are other folks thinking about the memorandum of understanding regarding the disposition of our discharge permit?
Yeah. I'm not sure I understand what your question is, John, other than are you suggesting maybe have a meeting prior to the meeting? Maybe a special meeting just on that item?
Yeah, maybe a workshop or time that we carve out to specifically focus on that and understanding its value and the strategic opportunity.
anytime on the 24th. That's a really crowded agenda, and so do you have a proposal? Do you want to try to do it first week of May?
To meet separately, that'd be fine. I just started a full-time job, but it's very important, so I can carve out time for it.
I would recommend that you try to do it on May 8th and just schedule a significant amount of time during that meeting. You certainly have, as it stands right now, you have time to discuss it then. The only thing strategically that I want to caution you on is that we still are trying to present you with terms on the financial guarantee as far as the Sanford Force Main agreement between the town and with Sanford. And so it's my intention to make sure that that agreement was as finalized as possible, if not approved, before you move on to the discussion on May 8th. So that kind of puts the onus on, I guess, in a way, on getting something approved or yearly approved on April 24th. And if that affects, if there's any, I guess, bargaining to be done with regards to, or additional negotiation that needs to be done on May 8th, then I guess we'll just deal with it at that time. But, it could alter your bargaining or negotiating position to be kind of putting the cart before the horse in a way. So,
excellent point.
Yep. I guess as long as I can get that out there.
Makes a lot of sense.
But I think May 8th, and we did talk about this at the last meeting that we had with Chatham Park and with Davenport, and that I think that there's going to need to be, I think, another check-in on the part of the board with regards to the Eubanks Road Reclamation Facility and how it operates, what's involved, what will be happening. The MOU document in and of itself is relatively simple. You're just looking at, or its intention was originally going to be very simple. It's just looking at being able to discharge, that plant being able to discharge a portion of what we are currently permitted to discharge. I mean, full stop. It's my impression that you guys are going to ask many more questions aside from that. So we did discuss at the last meeting that we had with Chatham Park, maybe addressing something like this, like you see on May 8th, in more of a workshop format, just like you're suggesting. So I think that would work great if that's what you want to do. It makes me a little bit nervous about the timing of it, but
we can push the timing back. That's fine.
Let's shoot for this right now. I mean, I think there's a willingness on the part of Chatham Park and Old North State to get in and talk to you guys about it. So from their end, it's not going to be a problem. It's just maybe I'm the only nervous Nelly in the room. I don't know.
Well, I'm just thinking. I'm thinking a lot of things about a new sewer treatment plant, and I'm thinking, as I mentioned during our retreat, why was Eubanks Road selected? Do we have some understanding, or can we gain an understanding of the hydrology, the topography? Was that indeed the optimal site, or was that just a convenient location for Chatham Park, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's a convenient place for the town of Pittsburgh to eventually own a sewer treatment plant?
Well, yeah, and they can answer that. It was my impression that it was an optimal location in terms of operation because of its low point. I think even Mayor Perry had mentioned at one point in time that wastewater, she noticed, center travels to this point. The wastewater plants tend to be in low-lying areas, and I think that's the case. That's what's going on here, and so. Certainly it's something that we can question, and ask them to maybe reiterate, provide some more information.
Okay. So another question that comes to mind is if they're proposing to build an environmental showcase for example, with educational components, and it exists at an entryway to our town with a very prominent face to the public entering town from the east. If it goes bad, or if the environmental component, the green, fancy, shiny greenhouse, doesn't actually process significant throughput from the plant, that's an embarrassment. That's not a showpiece. So just a lot of questions like that. And in terms of our negotiations and work with Chatham Park, this is a card we have in hand. And I would like to make sure that the board has the opportunity to really think this through before negotiations begin.
And I think you do have not only this board, but also the planning board. It's my impression, they have developed or have nearly developed a site plan for the facility that kind of, the real implication of that is that it tries to address a lot of the concerns, or the intention would be that it would address some of the concerns that you're talking about as far as the gateway or entrance into the town and how it as a physical structure presents itself on the way in. And I think that's where we kind of really sharpen our pencils a little bit and make notes on that as well. So, there's a couple of ways, a couple of cracks at this that I think we can have. But Mr. Messick's been there, and in a lot of ways I feel like I've kind of been the bad guy in the room in those meetings where it's just I don't feel comfortable presenting you guys with a document that you're not going to be comfortable with. So I've been taking a little bit of effort in at least trying to minimize, some of those issues that any negative problems or feedback that we might get ahead of time, and maybe anticipate problems, anticipate answers, and try to address those ahead of time before it gets to you, and then you guys can add on your wisdom and add on even more to that. So.
Well, that sounds fine. I just would, rather than have you be in the position of trying to mind read and anticipate from this board, I think it'd be really great if the board could actually.
And it's not really mind reading; it's feedback that you guys have actually provided even to this point.
Well, good. Okay.
And I think it's very helpful. One person said questions can help generate others. And so, John, if you felt that you had at least sort of rubbed out some of those questions, it would be helpful to pass them on to the board so that then they might generate additional questions from others. Are we ready to go on to Commissioner concerns? Yes, Farrell.
Don't have anything other than just want to thank the town for fixing that pothole on the Sonic Street. That thing, if I fell in that thing in time or two.
We got this. There's another one they cut out. I cut an even bigger hole out here at the entrance to the parking lot.
Appreciate it.
I thought I got away from potholes.
It's,
I must have brought them down or something.
One item, Brian, we've got this draft revisions to the water and sewer bill leak adjustment policy. Can we get a document that shows the changes that are proposed? Because I think we've adopted this policy, gosh, within a year and a half. A couple of years.
That was 2013. Time flies.
No. Oh, God. Anyway, yeah, can we get a draft version of it that has the markup? That would be helpful.
Anything else?
That's it.
Pamela?
I don't have anything.
John?
Sure, yes. So I understood from Mr. Jones that the small area plan has been submitted and that he is reviewing it to check for completion, and that he referenced the 10-day opportunity he had to do that, or staff has to do that. Where does that put us on officially receiving it and it becoming a public document?
when we received it, it was a public document.
Okay. Is it on the website?
I don't know if it's on the website.
Well, that'd be good if we could get it on the website. And similarly, I'm trying to brace myself to get ready for this small area plan because it's a very large small area plan. And so, with great thanks to Ms. Alice for sharing the approved process that this board approved September in 2015, and y'all all have copies of that process for review and approval of small area plans. I have searched a number of times on our website to try and find this document and only find the draft mentioned as a supporting document for that meeting. So we could also make sure that the final modified version is also on our website. That would be very helpful.
I'm sorry, the final modified version of what document exactly?
The process for review and approval of small area plans, because I think there were some changes called for by the board in its approval in 2015. And it may very well be on the website somewhere as a scan. And if we need to get software upgrade or something to make sure that we're putting scans on to, again, text searchable, that would be a wonderful thing and supportive of transparency and public engagement.
Anything else, John?
I guess that's it. Mr. Grusbeck, any thoughts or reactions?
Yeah, I said sounds good.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Anything further before the board tonight? I'll be missing you for at least the next 2 meetings, so you'll be in Pamela Baldwin's capable hands, and then I'll sort of check back in with you all and see how things are going. I'll miss you all, and so we'll look forward to being back in May. New and improved.
All the best.
The biennial, yeah. Thank you. Well, you know.
I know a bookstore where you can get some.
Oh, what a good idea. So, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Seconded.
Moved by Pamela Baldwin, seconded by John Roberts. So, stand if we